On the morning of November 5, 2024, Mackenzie Michalski was supposed to be leaving Budapest. She never checked out of the Airbnb she had shared with a friend, and she missed her scheduled flight. By then, her phone had gone quiet. Police began reviewing security footage from the clubs she had visited the night before. In several recordings, the same man appeared beside her. They had met during a night out, moved through more than one venue, and eventually left together. 2 days after Kenzie was reported missing, police detained him. He said she had died in his apartment. But by then, her body was no longer in Budapest. Mackenzie Michalski was 31 years old. The people close to her called her Kenzie. She was originally from Fredonia, in western New York, and later moved to Portland, Oregon, where she worked as a nurse practitioner. In November 2024, she was traveling in Europe with a friend. Budapest was not new to her. She had visited before and spoke about the city with real affection. Her father later said she loved its history and felt relaxed there. She called it her happy place. Her friend left Budapest for Italy on Monday, November 4th. Kenzie remained behind and planned to leave the following day. That evening, she went out in central Budapest. At Simpla Kert, a well-known bar popular with visitors, she met a 37-year-old Irishman who had arrived in Hungary less than a week earlier. They had drinks, danced, and later went to another nightclub. Security cameras recorded them together in several places during the night. By the next morning, Kenzie had not returned to the Airbnb. The host contacted her friend because she had failed to check out and her belongings were still there. Kenzie had also missed her flight and was no longer responding. Her friend contacted the United States Embassy. As word spread, relatives and friends created a Facebook group to collect information and shared Kenzie's photograph across Budapest. At that stage, nobody outside the apartment knew what had happened after she left the nightlife district. Her family still hoped there was an explanation for the silence, and her parents began traveling to Hungary to help search for her. Police, meanwhile, were going back through the last places where she had been seen. The cameras gave investigators a clear place to begin. Kenzie had spent the evening in a busy part of central Budapest, where bars, clubs and nearby streets were covered by surveillance systems. Police collected the available recordings and followed her movements through the night. The same man appeared with her in several clubs. The footage showed that they had met, spent time together and left for his rented apartment. Once police identified him, they also had a building connected to the last confirmed hours of Kenzie's life. It took 2 days to locate that building. Officers searched it on November 7th, but the man was not there when they arrived. He returned that evening as police were finishing their work and was detained. During questioning, he admitted that Kenzie had died while she was with him. He did not admit to murder. His position was that her death had been accidental during an intimate encounter. There was another fact police now had to deal with: Kenzie was not inside the apartment. The man had already taken her out of the city. After further questioning, he led investigators southwest toward Lake Balaton and showed them where he had left her, in a wooded area outside the town of Sigligit. Kenzie's parents were already traveling to Hungary when they learned that she had been killed. They had left home believing they were joining a search. Before they reached Budapest, police had recovered their daughter's body and arrested the last man seen with her. The speed of the arrest did not make the case simple. The man accepted responsibility for causing Kenzie's death, but he insisted that he had not intended to kill her. Everything the police found next would be used to test that account. According to investigators, Kenzie died in the rented apartment during the early hours of November 5th. Afterward, the man began removing signs of what had happened. He cleaned parts of the apartment and placed Kenzie's body inside a wardrobe. He then went out and bought a large suitcase. When he returned, he put her body inside it, arranged to rent a car and left Budapest. The drive to the area around Lake Balaton was about 145 to 150 kilometers. Near Sigligit, he carried the suitcase into a wooded area, left it there and drove back to the capital. At the same time, Kenzie's friends were trying to reach her and sharing information with anyone who might have seen her. The man's activity online became another part of the investigation. Before he was arrested, he searched for information about disposing of a body and about the way police handle missing person cases. He looked up whether pigs eat human remains and whether wild boars lived near Lake Balaton. He also searched for information about the competence of the Budapest police. Those searches did not tell investigators how Kenzie had died, but they showed what he was doing after her death and what he appeared to be worried about while people were looking for her. Police released video showing him directing officers to the wooded location near Sigligit. Photographs from the investigation showed the rolling suitcase, clothing, a small handbag and a bank card bearing Kenzie's name. By November 7, the search for a missing traveler had become a murder investigation with a suspect in custody and a body recovered far from the city. The remaining dispute concerned the hours inside the apartment. The man said Kenzie had agreed to choking and restraints during sex, and that her death had been an accident. Prosecutors would later argue that the injuries, the recordings found on his phone and his own changing statements made that explanation impossible to accept. By the time the case reached the Budapest Metropolitan Court, the basic route of the night was no longer in dispute. Kenzie and the defendant had met at Simple Kurt, had drinks in a bar and a nightclub, and then gone to his apartment. She died there. He concealed her body, drove it to Lake Balaton and returned to Budapest alone. The trial focused on what happened before she died and whether the defendant's account was believable. He pleaded not guilty to murder. He said Kenzie had asked him to choke her and use restraints during consensual sex. According to the defense, he failed to understand that she was in danger. What followed, they argued, was panic and an attempt to avoid responsibility, not proof that he had meant to kill her. Forensic evidence gave the court a different picture. Medical experts said Kenzie had been strangled for at least 2 to 3 minutes. The autopsy also found dozens of other injuries, including blunt force trauma to her head and scratch, scuff, and bite marks on her torso, shoulders, and hands. The court heard that Kenzie had suffered chronic neck pain since a car crash in 2013. Prosecutors argued that this made it highly unlikely she would ask a man she had just met to place prolonged pressure on her neck. Police had also recovered photographs and video recordings made inside the apartment before and after her death. One recording found on the defendant's phone showed Kenzie tied and no longer responsive. Clinical psychiatrists told the court that the defendant had given different accounts of how long he remained with her body. They said it may have been as long as 4 hours. He also told them that he had kissed her after she died. The defense maintained that none of the actions taken afterward proved an intention to kill. A person could panic after an accidental death, hide a body and still be guilty of something less than murder. The prosecution asked the judge to consider the evidence as a whole, the length of the strangulation, the number of injuries, the recordings, the earlier neck condition and the defendant's conduct after Kenzie stopped breathing. His version required the court to accept that Kenzie had asked for the violence that killed her. The judge did not accept it. On July 9, 2026, the Budapest Metropolitan Court found the Irishman guilty of murder. The judge said it was not believable that Kenzie, who lived with chronic neck pain, had asked a stranger to choke her for several minutes, tie her with belts and subject her to the level of violence described during the trial. He was sentenced to 14 years in a high-security prison without the possibility of early release. The roughly 18 months he had already spent in detention would count toward the sentence. When the prison term ends, he will be deported from Hungary and barred from returning for 10 years. The court also ordered him to pay 2.5 million Hungarian forints toward the cost of the proceedings. His lawyer appealed, arguing that the case should have resulted in a manslaughter conviction and a shorter sentence. Because of that appeal, the legal process is not fully finished. Kenzie's family attended every hearing. They wore teal ribbons because teal was her favorite color. After the verdict, her brother Nicholas said the important thing was that the man would remain off the streets and would not be able to do this to someone else. Outside the courtroom, Kenzie's mother held up a white shirt bearing her daughter's photograph. The family had first traveled to Hungary in November 2024 because Kenzie had missed a flight and stopped answering her phone. While they were still on the way, they learned that she had been killed. They later returned to Budapest for the hearings and listened as the court examined the final hours of her life in detail. Before the murder, Kenzie had spoken about Budapest as a place where she felt comfortable. She loved the history and had returned because the city meant something to her. The trial ended with a conviction and a prison sentence. Her family left with the court's decision, but without the person who had planned to leave Budapest on the morning of November 5.